An era of advanced technology. An era where women are making positive impacts. We chase our dreams. We strive for a better life. We explore the unknown. We create new possibilities. We're good at collaboration, connecting every idea.
在台湾有许多女性勇于投入不一样的领域，带来很多新的创建和可能性。
Technology changes our lives, and we believe we can change the world. We're entering a new era. An era of advanced technology. An era where women are making
Hello, I'm Caroline Zhou. Hello, everyone. I'm Caroline Zhou. Very nice to meet you online. Today is our NGOCS W67 meeting, and it's held by the Taipei Tenyuan Club, which belongs to BPW International. And today's topic will be addressed on the digital education across the gender gap. We are very happy to invite two speakers. One is Jenny, the other one is Bernice. They will give us a very good expression about their country, how they contribute to this part of digital education. And I'm Caroline Zhou. I'm the CEO of Silver Seed Guardian Corporation. Right now, I'm the Vice President of BPW Taiwan. And I'm also the Leadership Committee Coordinator of BPW Taiwan and the Board of Director of Women's Federation for the Women Peace Taiwan. And I'm also the Committee Vice Governor of Global Women Entrepreneurs Peace Alliance. Here, I'm very happy to be the moderator and the speaker today and to share you our experience and to also have the discussion today. At the beginning of this meeting, I would like to introduce my organization is Taipei Tenyuan Club to you. And today's event, the second organizer and sponsor is Silver Seed Guardian Corporation. It's my company, and we will give you a survey last year to that you have the a picture of the digital education in Taiwan. We special thank you to International Federation of Business Professional Women and the BPW Taiwan to support this event today, this time. Thank you. Here we have the picture of BPW Taiwan. Right now, the members in BPW Taiwan is more than 600 this year, and totally we have 11 clubs in Taiwan, and from the North Taiwan to South Taiwan. And this year we have two more clubs will be established in March, and maybe one will be established in May. BPW Taiwan has more and more possibility to support the people in Taiwan. And also we do the education work in Taiwan. And also we are a very good bridge, connect the international world. So every year we will attend the BPW Leaders Summit in New York, and also we will also have attend the BPW NGO CSW meeting every year in Taiwan. The right-hand side you can see is the BPW Taipei Tenyuan Club is the club which organized this event this time. And the BPW Taipei Tenyuan Club since 2012. And right now we have around 30 members here. And we have 5 missions in BPW Taiwan, and one is we would like to support the people who is need in Taiwan, and the other one is we would like to connect the world international and to have the sisterhood around the world. That's a very big mission in BPW Taiwan. That's why we consist to hold the BPW CSW online meeting. This is the 2nd year held by BPW Taipei Tenyuan Club. Hope we can bring you a very very good picture this year, and that you have the more specific ideas. How can we do the digital education around the world? Okay. At the beginning, I would like to give you a very special recap of the Taiwan's situation. The women board members in Taiwan tech companies average by sector, you can see is around 12% to 17%. It's not very big percentage in Taiwan compared with maybe other countries around the world. But the more focused one is the 17% in information service. So that's the big contribution from the women in Taiwan. And also you can see the equal pay day in Taiwan. This statistic number is quite good compared with the other countries, but still have the room to improve. As you can see this year, the equal pay day in Taiwan is February 27th, and also last year is February 27th. But in 2020, we have the very good number is around 21st February, and the high peak number is 2021 is February 2020. So as a women's club in Taiwan, we are still work very hard in this part. So hope the number next year will be better compared with this year. Okay, so now we would like to go to our first speaker is Jenny Glamani Abdullah, and she is the co-founder from Canadian Federation for Citizenship, and she is also the founder and the CEO at the Glamani Abdullah and Corporation. And also she is the member of International Bars Association because her major is the law major. So she's also the first Muslim president of Canadian Federation of Business and Professional Women, BPW Canada. This is very, very special position for the women. And also we title her as one of Canada's most powerful women by the Women's Executive Network. So that's welcome Jenny for her speech today. And Jenny, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you to BPW Taiwan and BPW Taipei for this invitation to join your panel. I'm just going to share my screen here and
okay, I'll stop my yes.
Are you able to see it, Caroline? Just let me know.
I haven't seen your PowerPoint, so you have to push the share button.
I'm hoping you're able to see it now, Caroline.
Okay. Okay, so you put the play model? Yes, correct. Thank you, Jenny. The floor is yours. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, for your patience. What I wanted to do, really, the topic for this evening is digital education across the gender gap. Caroline shared that. And of course, I'm coming from the Canadian perspective. And on the agenda, really, for this evening is to take a look at our population here in Canada. So, giving you a Canadian context, but also bringing intersectionality into the discussion. I'd like to move into the impact of the global pandemic. And here it'll be the Canadian context, but also we'll see the similarities in terms of what was happening globally. Lots of things that were happening in different countries, the things that we shared during the global pandemic. And of course, going into the different aspects of digital and online world that we experienced, but also getting in a little closer on digital technology itself, digital literacy, and digital inequity or equity. And then looking at what innovation could look like. And we've seen quite a bit of work in this area, but in this particular presentation, I'd like to focus in on age-friendly innovation. So of course, the population in the Canadian context that I will focus on for this evening will be elderly women. But, looking at elderly women, I want us to also, in the back of our minds, keep that focus of intersectionality, because elderly women do also come from other different backgrounds, giving them layering identities. So we might see women in, let's say, low income brackets. We may see elderly women who are disabled. We'll see elderly women who are widowed. And of course, elderly women who may be from different backgrounds, such as, indigenous communities, immigrant elderly populations. And so keeping in mind the intersectionalities as we go through this presentation. So looking at Canada specifically, and the stats I'm providing you here are from Statistics Canada. So a couple of years ago, we're looking at the 2021 census, and over 861,000 people in Canada were aged 85 and older. And this actually doubled from 2021. So over a 20-year period we're looking at. And by 2046, the population aged 85 and older could triple to almost 2.5 million people. So this number is continuously and exponentially rising. Over 9,500 centenarians are now living in Canada. This means those that reach the age of 100. And they represent a small number, 0.03% of the Canadian population. But by 2065, this number will actually reach to 87,500. Now, when you take a look at it with the 2021 census, there were 4 women for every man aged 100 and older. And so women outlive men in Canada. And while the ratio of women to men among people aged 85 and older is going down, women still continue to outnumber men. looking at a couple of years ago, and the stats showed that there were 1.7 women for every man aged 85 and older. So what we are seeing, and Canada is not unique in that way, because there are other countries, and in particular Japan, for example, with an aging population. And my perspective from immigration and perhaps even citizenship, leads me to, of course, share with you that because we have an aging population, we rely on immigration in a fairly substantial way. When we take a look at the last 3 years, and when the global pandemic hit Canada and the world, when you take a look at the pandemic itself in Canada, to be honest, it claimed many lives among the oldest Canadians. Yet this population, the aging population, continues to grow rapidly. Now, the growth of this population, it will accelerate even further, like I said, in the coming years, as the first baby boomer cohorts turn 85. And by baby boomers, I'm referring to those born between 1946 to 1965. When we look at these numbers, and when you think about Canada in particular, and in the Canadian context in terms of the aging population, they tend to live in private dwellings and perhaps need different types of housing options. So, for example, seniors, residences, I would say even community or collective living, and nursing care facilities. So we tend to see that as this segment of the population increases in number, but also continues to grow, and also is not necessarily living with family only. Remember, many of them become widowed, especially women. And so there are alternative living arrangements, and these tend to be common in Canada. What we saw with the aging population during the global pandemic is, and this was all over the news, by the way, because with an aging population, women in Canada made up almost 70% of residents in long-term care homes. And during the pandemic, they were faced with restrictions on in-person visitation because, we saw the whole concept of physical distancing and isolating, especially while this virus was spreading. And this had a very serious impact on women, elderly women, and their emotional and social health and well-being. Digital technology became a necessity to connect them with their loved ones, to reduce their loneliness. And we saw this on a daily basis on the news, on most of the channels that were talking about how we were responding to the pandemic, how we were being affected by the pandemic, how to get things under control where the virus was concerned. And this segment of the population was receiving the highest of attention during the pandemic because it was extremely serious, and especially seeing such a large percentage of residents in long-term care homes and being in this situation where their own family was not able to go visit them in person, and for them to now figure out how they were going to connect with their loved ones through a screen. And so this was something that will always be in the minds of Canadians. let's switch gears to look at digital technology, because at the end of the day, it was the elderly population that was so far removed from that option. And although we know globally, older adults are less likely to use the internet than younger people, even in Canada, many report that information technologies, they don't improve their quality of life or save their time. So unless you are an elderly person in an emergency type of situation, you wouldn't normally turn to information technologies because you don't consider that to be what is supposed to improve your life or save you time. And I'm not sure if saving time is a priority for you when you are elderly, when you are no longer working, when you are relying on more human interaction. And so you can see that the attitudes towards digital technologies also reflect the lack of knowledge about how the programs work or how information can be protected. A lot of times, elderly individuals do not see that space as being safe, and they don't see the absolute advantage of actually learning all of this. It was only through the pandemic that we realized, or especially with older adults, they realized that it became a necessity. Older adults were facing, increased social isolation. So while all of us, shifted to online only formats, whether it was work or, even in the case of BPW, the NGOs and networking, while we all switched to online only, older adults were actually facing more and more social isolation and feeling more disconnected from the world. When we take a look at digital literacy, and this is according to Statistics Canada, approximately 30% of the senior population do not use the internet. Now, of those who do have internet, many actually don't have strong enough digital literacy skills to use these tools that may help to improve their own mental health and well-being. So you start to see that the population that we're referring to here in terms of the aged population, they actually report never being taught crucial digital literacy skills. And here I have to say that we don't even do that great of a job with the most youngest in our population, because digital literacy, I mean, when is it a good time to introduce technology into our education and curriculum at all levels? Because when you think about technology, even when we speak of STEM, we actually see that happening in secondary or post-secondary levels when we speak of, picking or choosing fields like engineering or science or math. So where is the technology piece in areas of study where women seem to dominate? For example, do we talk about technology in languages and the arts and the humanities at an early enough level? So not only are we missing out on being able to talk about crucial digital literacy skills at the at the level where we're talking about the aging population who are saying we never received this type of skills. We're not doing that great of a job starting from preschool or early education to make sure that women are involved with technology from the earliest levels to the highest of levels. Comparing to OECD averages, Canadians do show higher digital literacy and problem-solving skills, but only when it comes to a certain age group of 16 to 65. That number is actually lower than OECD averages when we look at older adults at lower educational levels. So we're doing great, but only for a certain segment of the population. And so we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing in terms of the disadvantaged communities? Because the advantaged communities, they are performing better, but there is a significant gap between technologically experienced communities and then the disadvantaged groups. So looking at digital equity or inequity and keeping in our minds the various disadvantaged groups, like I mentioned, bringing into the forefront the intersectionalities into this, the women who come from low income brackets, perhaps from marital statuses that are affected by spouse passing away, racialized, immigrant, indigenous, elderly women, looking at how that actually grows in terms of the equity, how that becomes so vividly clear to us that when you take a look at intersectionalities, the gaps are even wider. 20% of those aged 60 and older in Canada do not even own a smartphone. Older people in Canada are more likely to lack a device that can connect them to the internet. And looking at rural communities where indigenous communities are residing in, they're at a far greater disadvantage. The age gap in internet adoption is slowly decreasing, yes, but lower adoption rates, let's face it, are also accompanied by lower speed. So when we think about innovation, because every problem has a solution, and in the midst of a pandemic, we really noticed where those problem areas are and how deep those problems are. We need to really look at innovation also from the perspective of it being age friendly, because elderly women are being left behind, and elderly women with all of their intersectionality are farther behind. And so how can we, or what does it mean to look at innovation specifically with the lens of that innovation being age friendly? And here are perhaps 3 questions that we could end with and take away to all the discussions that we're going to have even after this. Because at the end of the day, how can we make it relevant? Because when it comes to just saying, well, of course it's important, how can we make it relevant to this segment of the population? Is technology increasing the human interaction or coming close to it? Does it increase the exchange that elderly women are craving for in the middle of the pandemic when you are socially isolated? Well, that really made it relevant. So we need to look at innovation and say, can we make it relevant? How can it increase that exchange and interaction for the elderly population? How can we make it relevant so that they have access to more and better information for their own decision making, which means we need to understand their priorities, and then how can they get information in a way that is better than what they would if they were to just go talk to people about it, or go to the clinic just to get more information or walk into a clinic to get more information? How can we make sure that that information that they are seeking that is relevant to them for their own decision making and falls under their priorities, how can that be accessible faster, in a much better way, and that they have more of it? How can we make it easy? Because yes, you can make it relevant. Then is it easy because this is an age group that is going to be left behind out of just frustration? So is it simple to use, and is it affordable to access? Because if you're geographically located in a rural community and don't have access to it, or you cannot afford to have internet or buy a device, are we making it easy for this particular segment of our population? And so, how can innovation address that? And how can we make it safe? I mean, we hear all the time how senior citizens are being targeted, whether it's, click this and pay for this, or, this segment of the population is actually afraid to just click on that and pay this, and feels like they're constantly being targeted. So how can we make the online community for them, and where can they turn to? How can we make it easy for them to turn to credible sources in order to acquire skills? How can they get better at navigation, etc.? But how could we do it so that they're feeling safe? How do we create online spaces that are inclusive, that are safe for this segment of the population? Because online security is of paramount importance to this segment of the population. So I'll end right here. And, while we're, going on with our lives, whether it's we have consistent access, whether it's at work or with our own families, young and not so young, but, we're constantly dealing with the schools or other institutions or our work, and in our spaces where we're perhaps even engaged in voluntary work and other not-for-profit organizations, and in the business and professional world, we're going on with our business, whether it's in person, it's hybrid, or it's virtual and completely online. How do we bring this segment of the population into this world of ours that we've created, so that they are not being left behind, and that we are really including them even when we're thinking of innovating and bringing them into our present so they can be part of our future as well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jenny's presentation. When the first time I saw her presentation, I think this is a very important issue, international, I think, because that digital education will divide this world to two sides, especially for the poor women and for the senior women. They don't have the equipment, they don't have the knowledge, and they in the future may not have to receive the enough knowledge, and also they don't know how to do the payment. So in the future, I think the digital literacy is very, very important, especially for the aging women. I especially like Jenny's idea is how can we support and ensure their digital safe for these women, and how can we improve their knowledge in the future. Maybe we can have more discussion in this part later. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for your presentation.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Caroline.
Yes. And right now, I'm going to introduce our second speaker is Trisha Bernice Springer, and she is the second secretary of the Embassy of the St. Lucia in Republic of China. Right now, she based in Taiwan, and she also got a degree in graphic design with a minor in communication at Marymount University, and she's also the Taiwan MOVA Scholarship in 2011, the Master of National Chengchi University in Asia Pacific Studies, and she's also the first vice president with me in another club, Taipei International Women's Club. So she's going to share the situation in St. Lucia, and I'm looking forward to her presentation. And Bernice, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Caroline. So good morning and good evening to all. It is a pleasure to be invited to participate in this panel discussion on a very important topic, especially as we emerge out of the COVID-19 pandemic. As Caroline mentioned, I currently work as the second secretary at the Embassy of St. Lucia here in Taiwan, which has been a country that has provided a lot of assistance to St. Lucia as we move forward to improving digital education island-wide, developing the skills of our human resources. But I will mention what Taiwan, other countries, regional as well as international agencies have done to assist St. Lucia as it thrusts towards ensuring the upcoming generation is well prepared. Now let me share my presentation. All right, can you see it? Can everyone see?
Yes, no
Okay.
problem. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So now digital education for all, a solution perspective, this is primarily going to be within the context of academia, so schools, primary schools, and secondary schools. So for those of you who may not be familiar with my country, St. Lucia is an island nation located in the Caribbean, pictured in the following map here. It must be noted that the Caribbean is a multicultural and multi-ethnic society, which is the product of a colonial past, either British, French, Spanish, or Dutch, and also a mash of peoples and cultures. It is important to note this, especially as we discuss education and its subsequent evolution and transition into the digital age. Okay. Very quickly, St. Lucia is 238 square miles. That is about 616 square kilometers, population of 180,000 people. Our official language is English, as well as our primary language of instruction is also English. But the names of our capital city, as you can see here, as well as the districts and some of the smaller villages, they are French. So this represents an interesting part of our nation's history in that we were colonized by both the British and the French for a total of 14 times. So this tumultuous exchange also produced our Creole language, which is considered our mother tongue. And again, this historical fact is important because, of course, we'd want to bring a bit of our identity and our culture into the digital age and pass that on through digital education to our youth. Now, St. Lucia is 44 years young. We gained independence from Great Britain in 1979. And as a Commonwealth nation, our head of state is King Charles, and he is represented by a Governor General, and our system follows that of the UK. Now, as we discuss digital education, I wanted to make it very, very clear that St. Lucia has always postured education at the forefront of its development, and it's something that we're also very proud of. The fact that we have 2 Nobel laureates, which is the highest number of Nobel laureates per capita, is something that all St. Lucians definitely hold dear and that we are extremely, extremely proud of. The sons of the soil, Sir William Arthur Lewis and Sir Derek Walcott, not only share the same birth date, so they were born on January 15th, January 23rd, but they are 15 years apart. And another interesting fact about them is that they were both raised by single educated women, educated mothers. So it also goes to show that women being educated also help to sort of, it benefits the society at large. And although we have yet to have a female Nobel laureate, we do hope to have one soon, but it still shows the importance of having educated women as part of the society. Okay. Now, this is just a little bit of a gender profile regarding St. Lucia. So as I mentioned before, we have 180,000 people. A little over 50% of the general population is female, and it's stayed that way for the past decade. Girls have represented 50% of total enrollment in primary schools since 1994. And presently, there are also 50% of girls in terms of the enrollment between boys and girls in secondary school, it's about 1-to-1, so around 50%. But 82% of secondary school age girls in St. Lucia are currently enrolled in these institutions. There is a higher academic performance and school retention of girls as opposed to boys in St. Lucia. And that's something that governments right now and prior are trying to sort of address, because they have noticed that there is a little bit more of a fallout or dropout rates among boys as opposed to girls. Now, when it comes to employment, when it comes to their role in the economic society, women are the majority of managers in several sectors. So, for example, transportation, storage, manufacturing, agriculture, forestry, and fishing. And this information is from the International Labour Organization. There are more, however, let me see. There are. Right, so there are more. However, we also want to touch on some things that still need to be improved upon. So even though you do have the likelihood of a woman being your manager or being in a position that oversees you in St. Lucia is pretty good. The perception and the reception of women in the workplace, despite that ascent to higher corporate roles, needs to be improved, because sometimes you may see women in these places as a sort of a token. So just being there to just say that, oh, we have women in this company, not necessarily giving them a platform or a voice to be able to contribute to the overall development of the organization. St. Lucia presently only has 2 female senators, and our parliament comprises of 11 seats, so that's 2 out of 11. Women in agriculture, forestry, and fishing, there are not that many, so they're still male dominated. However, it must be made known that there is a significant number of rural women who are involved in subsistence farming, and there have been some projects that have specifically been catered to these rural women to be able to empower them so that they can be able to sustain themselves as well as their families. So there is a difficulty of girls and young women who did not graduate from secondary school to obtain jobs as opposed to boys. And that's interesting, considering previously I just mentioned that there's the higher academic performance of girls as opposed to boys. So it shows that even when some of them may not have finished, there is, I personally believe that there is still a bit of an advantage for women to be able to get jobs, but unfortunately that is not the case. And adolescents living in female-headed households at those ages 10 to 19, they're nearly equally likely to live in poverty as adolescents living in male-headed households. So that is a pretty big issue. Right. So an overview of St. Lucia's education system. So as alluded in the previous slide, St. Lucia's system follows that of the British. So we do have primary and secondary schools. So that system is pretty much shared by other countries in the English Caribbean. For example, Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad and Tobago, and Belize. Students begin their formal education at around 5 years old and end at grade 11, which is around 16 plus. But prior to adopting the US class system, i.e. K through 12, we went by stages, standards, and forms. So for example, if you were in primary school, you would start at stage 1, and then you'd go all the way up to standard 4. And then after that, you would switch on to forms when you entered high school. And then early childhood education centers, they accept kids as young as 2 years old, and they are mostly private owned. Okay, so this is just a reference for you to see what the grade level and the age association is like. And these are also a list of some of the key assessments that take place in our education system at certain points during the child's, learning in these institutions. The biggest one I do recall was the Common Primary Exit Exam, the CPEA. So that is pretty much the exam that helps you to transition on into junior high school and to high school. So it is done in grade 6, and then that is I do recall having to do that when I was at that age. Now, going to early childhood education, as previously mentioned, the majority of the centers are privately owned, which means that not everyone can afford to have their children sent there. And those who would rely on the availability of the public centers, those that are government owned, may also experience a level of difficulty because these government owned centers are very few. And in my introduction, I mentioned the importance of St. Lucia's history as being as we were colonized by the British and the French. The reason for mentioning this is that the church, particularly the Roman Catholic Church during the French period of colonization, set up the first schools on the island. Okay? So the curriculum, the mode of instruction, the instructors were set up by the church. Moreover, you had a situation whereby, because of the constant exchange between French and English, and also the development of Creole, the literacy rate was low from about the mid-1800s. So Britain was the last country to colonize St. Lucia. And once we gained independence in 1979, we had about a 78% literacy rate, but that has obviously improved, thankfully. And also the number of schools on the island, especially government schools, it has expanded. So we have around maybe 70 or so public primary schools on the island. Okay. Presently, the enrollment stands at 96% for primary schools. That's in 2019, prior to the pandemic. And we have the teachers, the cohort of teachers has diversified in both government-owned and private institutions, but you still tend to see women as being teachers as opposed to men. Now, as of 2019, there are more than 20 public secondary schools in operation, and there is about an 88% gross enrollment rate. Universal secondary education was achieved in 2006. Prior to that, if you were not able to pass the exam as you're leaving middle school, then you would not be able to be placed into a secondary school. So now with universal secondary education, every student is able to have a place in those secondary schools. Now, tertiary education, those who can afford the opportunity for tertiary education can pursue that route. But there is a community college on the island. It's known as Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, and these are the certifications that the community college provides: teacher education, nursing education, as well as a what we call the Caribbean Advanced Proficiency Examination. So that's a certificate that proves your academic or vocational achievements for students who have completed the 5 years of high school and wish to pursue further studies. Now, of course, higher education can be pursued outside of the region, and this is just a timeline of the main sources of higher education funding that was received. So in the 1930s, we had the UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the US. Then we moved to Cuba, Canada, and the UK. Cuba especially was important as it received a lot of our students for medical training. So a lot of our doctors have been trained in Cuba. And then in the 1990s to 2000s, you had USAID, which provided limited opportunities, but nonetheless opportunities. The UK, New Zealand, and Canada. And since 2009, UK and Taiwan. And it must be noted that presently in Taiwan, we have about 150 St. Lucian nationals, the majority of which are students. And it just goes to show that there is pretty much a high demand for students to study in Taiwan, as scholarship applications are pretty much have exceeded the actual intake once these application periods close. Okay. All right, so moving on to the SDGs and the MDGs. St. Lucia achieved most of the MDGs by 2006, and MDG stands for Millennial Development Goals. And moving into the 21st century and a post-COVID-19 pandemic environment, the government of St. Lucia has acknowledged the overarching role of digital education in its efforts to achieve several of the SDGs. However, there are existing issues that need to be addressed across the board for both boys and girls from early childhood all the way through. So this is not something that has happened prior to the pandemic or has been discovered prior to the pandemic, but it still sort of continues to this day. Again, as I mentioned before, not everybody can send their children to early childhood centers. There is an issue with the affordability in primary education, books and other materials for technical, vocational education, lack of IT devices, transportation subsidy. Some students do have a difficulty when it comes to getting to school, whether it be on time or whether it be at all. School feeding programs, you may have situations where parents have to think about whether to give their children money to take the bus or whether money to go to have something to eat at school. And it's the same thing for the secondary schools. In the early childhood centers, you do have more of an opportunity where the children get to be fed and taken care of. But of course, there are still issues that remain. And then compounded with the fact that prior to 2019, we were just starting to get more of a stable internet infrastructure. I mean, we've had it, but it has had its issues. And I think that's something that needs to be really focused on if we really want to implement digital education and improve upon it, having the existing infrastructure be bolstered, whether it be through fiber optic cables, whether it be through additional access points. And that is something that the government of Taiwan has been assisting St. Lucia with. Now, this is a quote that I got from Mr. Seymour Papert, who's a South African-born American mathematician, computer scientist, and educator. And it says, "You can't teach people everything they need to know. The best you can do is position them where they can find what they need to know when they need to know it." So when you look at digital education regarding the youth, it's important for us to realize that you have digital natives and then you have digital citizens. Digital natives right now are the students that are becoming more and more adept. These are the people that are pretty much having constant interaction with technical devices, whether it be their cell phones, whether it be tablets. So they are the ones that are pretty much always engaged in the digital or online sphere. So we cannot compete with it, but the best thing that we can possibly do is to guide students, guide children to be able to use the technology and the digital sphere in a way that will best benefit them and best benefit their overall educational development. And so that leads to the educational vision of the government of St. Lucia. The government of St. Lucia presently hopes to achieve the goal of having 1 university graduate per household by 2027. And it hopes to continue to produce productive members of society that are not only prepared to work in St. Lucia, but also abroad. Now, here are some of the digital education projects and programs that are going on in St. Lucia. So they range from teacher training, innovative camps, and programs for young learners, including young girls. Some are local government initiatives, others are in collaboration with regional and multilateral organizations like the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, also known as OECS, and the Organization of American States, also known as OAS. Now, GINET is the collaborative project that is being done with the Republic of China, Taiwan to improve internet penetration island-wide, okay? To aid St. Lucia in its efforts to incorporate digitization in every aspect of its national development. So phase 1, which began in 2018, laid the groundwork for free Wi-Fi connection with the installation of, I believe, around 70 wireless access points. in the capital city of Castries and in other districts around the west, southwest, and bits of the east coast of the country. Phase 2 will see the deployment of additional access points, and also the running of fiber optic cables. So we do hope that as this continues to be in process, that internet penetration island-wide, especially to the rural areas, will be improved. The Digital Education Capacity Strengthening Initiative, which is the last one at the bottom that's listed here, is for kindergarten to grade 3 classes throughout the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. So it is being done in collaboration with UNICEF and USAID, and it will focus on training, teacher training, and the creation and access to culturally relevant and engaging material. Now, the culturally relevant is a very important point because digital education is not something that is one size fits all. When you take into consideration the different cultures, when you take into consideration the different communities that exist even within larger countries. So for example, Canada, which is also multi-ethnic and also multicultural, digital education cannot necessarily just posture one specific thought process or one specific goal in mind. It needs to take into consideration the different experiences of the people that do reside there. And so when it comes to creating culturally relevant and engaging material, having programs like DCEI are extremely important. And then these are some of the policies and programs that have been developed in St. Lucia. So for example, the education sector development plans. And as you can see, since 2000, it shows that St. Lucia has already been thinking about the integration of ICT in education to enhance performance and lower costs. So this is something that has been in the minds of the policymakers for quite some time. But of course, there have been challenges along the way, but it still shows that there is a fervent effort to ensure that ICT and innovative technologies and digital education is achieved. Then you have the education enhancement through information and communications technology program, as well as the ICT in education policy and strategy for St. Lucia 2017 to 2020. And that was actually put together in collaboration with the Commonwealth of Learning. But of course, when the pandemic hit, there was an added incentive and an evident haste to leverage technologies and the digital space, which were confounded by the listed issues. So the disruption of face-to-face instruction, that is an obvious one, yes, but then you also take into consideration the fact that students as well as teachers had a preference for having that face-to-face instruction. And there were also students who did not learn as well. They lacked the engagement with their peers. And also when you look at students who have special needs, for example, it's not something that being online can automatically address. Granted, it would help, but considering the panic or the haste with which we had to transfer everything online, you did have this sort of situation where students with disabilities, students who had learning issues were very, very affected with the lack of face-to-face instruction. Weak internet penetration in rural areas, again, that is something that the GINet hopes to resolve, but presently there is still that issue. Lack of devices and adequate knowledge of their use, teachers, students, and parents. So it's one thing to be able to have the devices. It's another way to be able to learn the length, the breadth, and the depth of how these items are used. So you can have a cell phone, you may be able to understand how to work social media, but then you may not necessarily be able to learn how to upload your essay to the platform or be able to utilize the platform. So there is still a limited knowledge in how teachers, students, and parents use their devices, and that's something that I think would need to be improved upon in order to maximize access to digital education. And again, preferences for learning and instruction methods as obstacles. You have a preference, yes, and then that may also produce a bit of hesitancy among the instructors to sort of transition to an online mode. But again, I think what is happening right now, especially because of the pandemic, it is showing that there is still a need for it. It's not that face-to-face instruction is going to be completely obsolete. It is looking at digital education as a sort of support for face-to-face instruction, especially when you encounter situations like a global pandemic, and the ineffectiveness of online assessments. So how are online assessments administered? How are they tallied? How are they used to properly assess how the students are learning? So this is also something that has been brought up, an issue that has been brought up, digital education during the pandemic. Okay. Now, moving forward, I split this into category A and category B. Category A tends to be a little bit more on the physical side in terms of infrastructure and devices that are still in need right now in order to allow students to be able to maximize on digital education. The government of St. Lucia actually had a program, or has a program rather, called the One Laptop per Child. And that is a initiative whereby they hope to provide all children with laptops so that they'll be able to access it. But with that comes a little bit of a nuanced issue whereby not only would some of the children in rural communities not necessarily be able to access the internet, that may be the only device in the family. So maybe other people might be using it as well. So then you may probably have a little bit of competing priorities there. So how do you sort of manage that? So there is also a need to continue to outfit schools with smart classrooms and appropriate technological components to sort of aid in. So students have IT devices, great, but the schools also need to be outfitted with smart classrooms so that those who may not necessarily be able to have access to the internet or have access to a device can still get the benefits of digital education while at school. All right, now category B, improve teachers' perceptions of digital education and online learning, as I mentioned before, not as a replacement, but as an aid to traditional methods of instruction. Monitor safety in the digital world, and I think that is extremely important, not only in terms of, how should I say, how they use the internet. When they're at school, when they're doing projects, when they're doing their free time, now that people are having discussions about the metaverse, what takes place in the metaverse, are our children safe? All of that needs to be taken into consideration as we move towards ensuring that digital education is accessible to all. Improve representation and perception of women in tech. Now, this is particularly for our girls. Decades ago, what used to happen was that certain subject matters were reserved more so for the boys as opposed to the girls. So technology, some of the sciences, they were not necessarily pushed towards the girls as opposed to the boys. So if we were to be able to improve representation and perception of women in tech, whether it be through coding, whether it be through, how should I say, website building, design, robotics, those sorts of things. If our girls were able to see that there are women in those positions, they may be inspired as well to be able to consider thinking about entering into what is perceived to be, well, not is perceived to be, what is a male-dominated industry. Collaborate and create digital education resources and other materials that reflect relatable cultural characteristics and nuances. I did touch about this previously, and I still want to highlight that as being something that's very important. And encouraging the youth to be a part of this process as well, because yes, you are teaching them, but there is a lot that they can teach us. What is it that they want to see? How do they want to be taught? And what are the solutions that they can create through using online platforms, through using innovative technologies that can aid in their educational development? And the last point here, adapt digital education to aid special education learners and learners with disabilities. I think this is something that will not happen overnight, as with the rest of the points that I did make here. But I think it's also important to include this section of our society, because when it comes to really big transformational changes like this, sometimes they tend to be left out. And so it's important to also remember them, so that it's more of a holistic, more of a comprehensive approach. Right. Now, this is the policy success model, which I think it is a very neat little diagram showcasing how governments or agencies can sort of posture digital education, as sort of their mission and their vision. But then it needs to start with the philosophy and the values, and that sort of needs to be changed. How do the general population see education, digital education, online platforms, and innovative technologies? How do our teachers see it? Is it something that they are willing to engage in? Are they still sort of do they still prefer the traditional methods of instruction? What are the philosophies and the values that come with education? If education is so important, then of course there would be strides needed to be taken in order to ensure that education can be something that is not relegated to a time and a place. It is something that is ever evolving and ever expanding. And then you look at the priority areas. What do we do first? What do we do second? What do we do third? So that the overall mission and vision, for example, transform instruction and learning in St. Lucia through adopting digital and innovative technologies, expand and improve access to education, bolster human resource knowledge in the 21st century, in 21st century skills. Those can be the general mission and the vision. And understanding what the priorities are can help towards guiding policy, towards guiding a sort of strategy towards ensuring digital education is being reached. Now, outside of academia, my apologies. I think this one just popped up. There we are. So outside of academia, I also want to touch on digital education in economic empowerment of women, digital agriculture, as well as resilience programs. So these are a list of 3 of the programs that are incorporating digital education, innovative technology to empower women in Latin America and the Caribbean. So the government of St. Lucia and the government of Taiwan, of the Republic of China, Taiwan, they held a workshop which is called Assisting the Economic Empowerment of Women in Latin America and the Caribbean in the Post-COVID-19 Era project. So what it did was that it allowed women to be trained in ways that will help to bolster their own small businesses, to be able to become entrepreneurs, to be confident in the products that they are producing, and to become familiar with the technologies and the software and other aspects of building their brands through the use of such technologies and other sorts of knowledge courses. Now, digital agriculture for farm-to-table sustainability. This was a project that was done by Helen's Daughters in collaboration with the University of British Columbia, and it equipped rural women in St. Lucia with technical expertise on climate resilience practices and it also informed the engineering students who were on island to assist with the projects what were some of the issues that Caribbean countries faced, especially in light of climate change. And the Inclusive Digital Resilience Program was launched by Barbados, which is another country that's part of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States and is right across from St. Lucia. It is a regional initiative whereby the UNDP Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, in collaboration with the University of the West Indies and the Frankfurt School of Management, they designed a business adaptation course and trained 187 Caribbean small medium enterprises, of which 70% of those entities are women owned. And so these women came from around the Caribbean, various backgrounds and experiences. And through this program, they were being trained in digital technologies, financial planning, marketing to better adapt to the instabilities and challenges that they face in the region for a variety of reasons. So I just wanted to touch on the fact that although digital education is important in our academia, we also need to see its importance in other aspects of national development, whether it be through health, agriculture, entrepreneurship. So it just goes to show that it's a cross-cutting sort of element in our overall development. Okay. And with that, I think I have come to the end of my time. I just hope that this presentation was able to provide you with a sort of an introductory overview as to what St. Lucia has done in terms of its digital education strategies and its movement towards creating more of an equitable environment for both boys and girls and women and young men, whether it be teachers or other actors, to be able to become involved in. So I look forward to hearing the rest of the presentations, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for Bernice's presentation. I think Bernice gave us a very clear picture of what their government do in the education part, especially maybe for the young girls, young women. And also she point out some question. For example, they might need the self-learning skill when they are doing the digital education, and also the lack of the equipment devices in the future. But this, I think the government will do the big support in this part to make the young generation can have the enough devices and also build a very good environment for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the digital power, especially for the young women's, young girls, is very important in the world, because the digital power may be the future power when they're competing to the world. So that's why I think the St. Lucia government to do this part and work very hard and co-work with Taiwan government can have a more result in the future. Thank you for Bernice's presentation today. Yeah, maybe we can have some Q&A in the future, in the rest of the part. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And right now, it's my turn. I'm going to share the Taiwan experience to everyone in this forum. And I'm Caroline. I'm the CEO of Silver Seed Guardian Corporation. I also work with lots of international women's clubs such as BPW International and also FWP International, and also the Taipei International Women's Club. My company also doing the educational part, especially for the adult education. So I would like to share some experience, my club experience, and also my company experience, and also Taiwanese experience to you. This is the outline I would like to do today. Is a background and the current status in Taiwan, and also the cases sharing from Taiwan, especially my company's survey and the difficulties of digital education for women and girls, and how the suggestion and the conclusion for this part. This is the Taiwanese female labor force participation rate in major countries in 2020s. As you can see, for the Japan, United States, Republic of Korea, they have the workforce after 50 years old. But as you can see this picture in Taiwan's chart, you can see after 50 years old, most of Taiwanese women retirement and they exit from this working industry. I also share some experience to my students on the class. As you can see, some women, they have the achievement is always after the year after 50 years old. So for the Taiwanese women, now we need to educate. In my class, I always hope to encourage my students to stay in their job more and more. For example, for my self experience, I would like to work until 85 years old. If I have this kind of topic, then target, then I have to encourage myself to be younger and to have the self-learning skill and to connect with the younger world. So I will force myself to learn the digital devices and also educated the people who around me. They can also have the more skills in the digital part. Okay, the second part. The next page is the graduates of college and university. For the architectures and the construction engineering status in Taiwan, the women from the 2009 till 2019, we only have around 30% in this kind of industry. That's why Taiwanese government work very hard in STEM education, especially for the girls who are in the junior high school and the senior high school, and hope they can choose the STEM work in the future. Okay, this is the proportion of women higher education graduates in Taiwan compared with the major industry country. So you can see Taiwan's chart. We have the highest ratio of the associated degree for the junior college women's in this part. But afterwards, for the bachelor's degree and the master degree and you see the doctoral degree is lower than the other countries. So for the Taiwanese women, we would like to encourage all of us to have the higher education, especially when you have the higher education, you will have the constructive thinking, and also you know how to do the survey, and also you will access the digital device and the skill more than the people who haven't had this kind of education. Okay, so this is also the female in the higher education graduates various fields in Taiwan. So you can see in Taiwan, we have the highest ratio for the women, about around 70% in the education part, and also the arts and humanities parts. So that's why the digital education for the women, why is very important? Because we have the largest women's in this industry. If they have this kind of concept, they can educate their student, their child to have more skill and knowledge in this part. Okay. So here is the adult participation in lifelong learning activities. Taiwan is the green bar that you can see. We only have the 35.8% male in the lifelong learning. But for the women's, we have 41% in the lifelong learning. But compared with New Zealand, Sweden, Norway, and United States, the ratio is quite low. So that's why we have to work very hard to have our women have the self-learning skill and also encourage they learn and participate in the lifelong learning activities in the future. Okay, now I would like to share. As you can see, lots of people, when you mention about Taiwan, you will think about this is a tech islands. Why Taiwan is a tech island? Because our government work very hard in e-government. So from 1998, we start from the stage one, from the internet part. We build this kind of infrastructure, and first to let our people can access the internet very easily. And the stage two, also the EG program. And the stage 2.5, we would like to build Taiwan as the e-Taiwan. So later on, I will have a picture to you what is e-Taiwan. And also continue to the 2017 to 2020, our government work very hard for the digital government. So all the government documents and maybe the application from the citizens, we also provide the digital access to let our citizens to apply everything, and across the area and across the country, they can apply it online. Here is a picture of the e-Taiwan picture. So as you can see, the e-Taiwan, we would like to build a high-tech service island of Taiwan. So we work very hard. We work in the information-rich society. We hope our citizens can have the best information available, and also a competitive industry. So we also hope the industry can have the competitive skill, and also the intelligence transportation. So like you can see, we have lots of application when you have the MRT, bus, and like a high-speed railway. So everything you can go through your smartphone to buy the tickets, to know the information, and to book the hotel. Okay, so it's the normal word in Taiwanese person. And also would like to have the fiber option to the household to let them to easily to connect the Wi-Fi. As Jenny mentioned, for the senior citizens, senior women, why they are difficulties to enter this digital world, because they don't have the environment, they don't have the devices. So we work very hard to build this kind of environment for our citizens in this part. So this is the example when we are in the pandemic. Our government built a mask map to that every citizens can easily access this mask map to through the internet, through your cell phones, everywhere. So you can know which the grocery store can have the mask left, then you can go there to buy the mask. You don't have to physically line up in the store, but you can just check the nearest store, and if they have the quantity, then you can go to buy it. So for the younger generation to the elder generation, we provide the same information to them. And also our NHS system is quite famous in the world. So this time we also provide the NHS system, the virtual card to our citizens, so they can easily access this kind of system and to find their hospital and their what medicine their doctor provide to them, and how many times they go to the clinics or hospitals, and their history of medical status. So every citizens, if they have the cell phones, mobile phones, then they can apply the apps, then they can have this kind of system. So for example, my father and mother, they have already 80 years old, and we also put this kind of apps in their cell phones, so they can easily check in their cell phones. Okay, so now I'm going to share the cases about the survey. This is a survey in my company did in 2022, and it is about the workplace and life after pandemic. So I just grab up some information related to this topic today and to let you know the status in this country. This survey, we actually gather the age allocation like that. We have about 33% population of this survey is women. Age is over 55, and about 40% is 46 to 55. So later on, I will break down this survey to you to let you know. Okay. We have a question asked about them. Have you improved your tech ability after COVID-19? So we got the response about 40% of this population reply they are improved a lot, and 43% they improve a little bit. Only 15% they have the same skill as before. So actually, pandemic improved the tech abilities in my country's ladies a lot. Okay, so here is some information for the digital education. For the people who respond to improve the technology abilities, we can see the age over 56, you can see they improve a lot. The ratio is 32%. But for the age 46 to 55, they improve a lot. 50% of this group, they said they improve a lot for this part. And for the age 26 to 35, they only improve a little bit. So what the information talk to us? For the age 46 to 55, they can learn quickly and speedily in this kind of age. So this group age women, we can have the more education to them to let them go into the digital world easily. As well for the age 56, over 56, we can also do the same thing. Okay, this is the picture for you. And for the women who responds, your favorite meeting system, we have the Meet, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, Cisco WebEx, and Line to get them to as a choice. And you can see most people say they actually did a lot in the Zoom system and also the Google Meet. As we have the overall survey, they said the room is very easy to access. But for the government reason, we cannot using the Zoom for the meeting. So most of majority here, we use the meeting through the Google Meet. So that's why Google Meet also have the very good bit higher population here. And let's break down to the age. So if you can see, if we break down to the age, you can see the green part of age 56, they have the 22% in live meeting. Maybe the people who are not in Taiwan, you don't know what is live, but the live actually is the conversation tool for day-to-day using in Taiwan. So if your age is below 100 years old here, everyone nearly can using Line here. So that's why for the age 56, they are using Line. They is their favorite. But for the rest of the age group, Line is not their first choice. Okay. So for the live meeting preference, you can see age 56 have the 67%. This is their preference. That's why if we are doing the education for this group, normally we were doing live meeting for them to easily to access and to be educated. And for the Google Meeting also, the preference is the age 46 to 55 and also the age 56. Okay, so here you can see this survey. And here we have the room meeting and the Cisco WebEx meeting is along with the majority is the 46 to 55. Maybe this because this age is women also in the working place, so their company provide this kind of system to them. So that's why they are using this system to as their preference. So how can we enhance women's digital skill? We in Taiwan, we are encouraging e-meeting, e-training, e-practicing. And for the elderly person, we are doing face-to-face training and practicing to let them learn more. And also to do the day-to-day learning. Here is some example. I actually did a lot for the digital education here for the senior women, especially the age over 50. And also in BPW Taiwan, we start from the e-meeting as well in my Taipei Tenyuan Club. And we also have the group speech from the e-meeting last year. So around more than 100 our members also attend this meeting. Okay, so this is the practicing we are doing. You see, we did a lot of e-meeting here, e-training, and most people can using that. And the left, the bottom corner, you can see is the live meeting, especially for the Taiwanese women. So the digital education focusing in Taiwan for I break down for the three group. For the senior group, we let them to like to use electronic devices. And we would like to update the knowledge training to them. For them, I think everything we need to be their day-to-day life. So let them to have the simple usage to the YouTube, social media, meeting system. And also for the education, we encourage them, if you have more digital ability, you are easily to communicate to the younger generation. For the middle age group, we are doing the updated knowledge training. And also, we hope they can simply use it to the YouTube, social media meeting systems. And also let them know they also can easily connect with the younger generation. For the junior group, because they was born maybe to using the electronic devices, so we hope they from the video side to the wording side, understanding ability can raise more, and also sharing their experience to the elder group, let them to easily to connect with each other. Okay, this is the digital education focusing in Taiwan. And we hope that in Taiwan, we can have more education for the senior women to have the day-to-day learning in this part. And what's the difficulties for that? Difficulties to encourage the digital women because they lack of the self-learning skill. So right now, we encourage people to have the self-awareness, also the self-learning skill have to improve by themselves. So this is a mindset. If they can open their mindset to do the self-learning, they can connect the world easily. And also the equipment, devices, and the personal e-environment, they have to build up. For example, my mother's age is 82, and some of my friends, their age is over 80. Why they can access the digital world easily? Because we build the Wi-Fi environment. All the devices we set up for them, and let them enter this kind of environment so they can access easily. And also the mindset, the senior person, they always think they are too old to learn the new skills, but we have to encourage them to let them know they can do it. Then so we can have the more practicing with them and more video conference with them, get them familiar with this kind of environment. And also the economic status, because for the poor people, they cannot to buy the equipment they need. So for the government part, they have to support this part. And also the education status, women who have higher education could learn more and faster. And the gap for the senior women and the poor girls need to build up more. This is the status here. So my suggestion is continue to teaching and promotion digital concept to everyone here and provide the various digital devices to fit different groups. So also the vision to the next generation and the digital development that they can try to educate to all the citizens. Okay, that's the presentation I bring to you and hope you can have some feedback to us. Okay, so now can we ask Jenny, Bernice, come back to the meeting, then we can have the small discussion. For the people who online, if you have any question, and you can ask us or we can discuss. Can we have your screen, Bernice? Okay. Okay, Jenny, you can open your microphone. Okay. If Jenny, I just want to have some ideas because as your presentation, you are talking about only 30% of your senior population. They do not use the internet. But how in your government or in your side, how can you improve this kind of situation? Have you think about it or you have any idea of that?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it as well, Caroline, the importance of not just, education and awareness. And, it's also being in the middle of a pandemic. When you're faced with a crisis, then of course you need everyone to act and to act fast. So, it's so important for governments to be able to work on this as well along with us, because of course when you're faced in a crisis, the fact that we've got to educate and raise awareness and go out there and actually do the work that we need to do in a crisis, you actually need governments to step up. And I think that the intention was always there, and especially with the Canadian government, when the seniors programs or benefits were being rolled out, when different vulnerable segments of the population were facing different types of challenges, that was the time when governments needed to step up. And we saw that in Canada, the government responding in a crisis situation. And many governments across the world also had to do some of that work instead of just leaving it for maybe just civil society leaders to handle it on their own or deal with the vulnerable populations. And I think it's a time when the way we respond to the vulnerable groups in terms of crisis situations, it speaks about us as peoples, right? It's not just any one thing that's going to work, that's going to hit every point and every segment of the population. But I think it's, intention along with funding, and then of course working with the vulnerable populations that are falling behind. So whether it's the senior citizens, serving organizations, the NGOs, people who actually are faced with that situation in a health institution. So if you're in a long-term care home, everyone had to step up so that that individual that's not able to reach their loved ones had to be helped. And if that help was coming from a volunteer, or the help was coming from a health professional, or whether that help was coming from anyone that is providing that personal support, it was like everyone had to step up in order to respond to that situation. Could we have done better? Of course. Could we have done this sooner? Of course. And in a crisis situation, it's not then about that segment of the population. It's no longer about, oh, what the aged should have and could have done, but it also speaks to what we can do to be in that situation and help and step up in the time of crisis.
Yes, yes. I think government can do more. So maybe in the future, when we have the international meeting, we can talk more about and push the government to do more, the international government to do more. Like in the past of the time, I think we have lots of public phone on the street. But right now, because people using the cell phone frequently, so the public phone, you cannot find in anywhere, especially in Taiwan. Everybody use the cell phone here. But I think in the future, if we want to go to the 5G or to make the world more digital, actually, how can we provide to this equipment devices to the, as you say, the vulnerable citizens, and to let them know not only the knowledge but also the devices. So maybe every country should establish like the public stations for the people who don't have this kind of devices, or in the public libraries we can provide more to that our citizens to access easily, and to educate them to can not afraid to learn the new things, and also open their mind to access this world. I'm the 50 years old right now. I think maybe when I'm going to turn to 80s, the world is totally different. Digital, everything began to the digital. So how can we also fit ourselves to the world in the future? We have also to educate ourselves to do the self-learning, to access this kind of digital devices, and also teach the people who around us, and to make them have the more progress in that. Yeah.
Caroline, a good example is, BPW Calgary in Alberta, Canada. BPW Calgary, during this CSW 67, they launched an e-waste fundraiser, meaning they called on the community to give their unwanted and used laptops and devices, to donate them, so that BPW Calgary would take the responsibility to safely and securely ensure that all of the information on those devices were safely removed, and involve another not-for-profit organization to help in the refurbishing of those laptops and devices, so that they can eventually donate them to students and seniors in need. So I think that is an excellent example of, having a simple laptop drive in order to be able to donate them to, that segment of the population that perhaps can't afford, or sometimes we're dealing with larger families, for examples, even in the immigrant population, where you might have a device or one or two devices, but maybe there are larger family members. And so instead of them missing out on online schooling, because,
Yes.
maybe 5 children have to share one laptop, these are the kind of things that we've got to think about and, be more creative about how we're going to have these types of drives and then respond to the community's needs.
Yeah, I think this is a very good example. I think maybe in Taiwan we can think about that because we have lots of tech companies here and we are very good to build laptops and computers. Maybe in BPW Taiwan we can also encourage our local company to co-work with our BPW Taiwan and to have some not only fundraising, maybe the equipment, the devices raising, and to bring those equipment to the people who need, especially for the elder generations and also the people who cannot buy it. Yeah. Okay, Bernice, do you have some information would like to share? Because Bernice is quite very busy today. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So Bernice, would you like to share a little bit? Yeah.
In conclusion of my presentation, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I just think that especially the points that were raised by Ms. Gulamani Abdullah with regards to one or two devices in the family being the sole devices that everybody in the family is using. So you do have people who may not be able to gain access to the device to do what it is that they may need to do, like children, etc. It goes to show how not only outfitting the families with additional laptops can assist, but also educating them on how they can use maybe public spaces. Maybe their libraries could have like additional setups, or maybe the community centers could also be outfitted with smart laptops or smart classrooms or smart spaces. This way you're able to create a more equitable access to these sorts of environments. And again, I also want to sort of go back to stressing on the cultural components when it comes to creating accessible material, ensuring that it's not just a because you don't want a situation where you have a square peg in a round hole, you know what I mean? You want to ensure that when people are learning, they are learning based on their experiences, because that's not only a way to sort of enrich the curriculum, but to empower themselves as well, because they are seeing themselves, they are seeing their culture in the curriculum that is being taught. And if it is translated into a digital space as well, it's inevitable when you really think about it. Being able to have your identity and your culture being seen in the larger sort of ecosystem of the digital world, I think is extremely important.
Yeah, very important. And Jenny, would you have your closing remark for this part?
Yeah, just a final word that we need to really think about who is being left behind. And that, when we look at women and girls, we need to look at them in their layering identities, that it's not just a particular group or, we're looking at all of them in all of their diversity, because different groups have different needs and that needs to remain in the forefront.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Bernice. And I'm doing the small closing here. And we are very thank you, Jenny, to provide her experience in Canadian, and the Bernice provide her experience from St. Lucia. And I think the digital world is very close to us. Everybody have to aware about that, and we have to take care of the people who cannot catch up with us and give them support, and using different methods, different support to that everybody can enter this world easily, safely, and successfully. That's the presentation for three of us today, and we are very happy for your join. And actually, we also provide a YouTube link for this meeting, and later on you can go to the YouTube and to review this meeting as well. Have a nice day, and thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Bernice, and bye-bye.
Thank you, Caroline. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.